Hello, YouTube, and welcome to the latest edition of This Guy, the show where we pick one guy who's making America worse and explain why they suck. I'm Erin Ryan, host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco, the other host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast.
I'd like to start this episode with a fun riddle. What happens when Krusty the Clown has a baby with the least talented Kardashian?
Krusty the Clown Kardashian? Well, you get 3 Ks in a row, that's for sure. But I think I get where you're headed. Somebody whose greatest strength is getting attention, who has an almost pathological need to be talked about and a willingness to throw just about anybody under the bus in chasing the growing amount of validation he needs to survive. There is only one fucking guy this could be about, and it's not Mickey Mouse.
Donald Trump wishes he were as famous as Mickey Mouse. And at least Mickey is famous for bringing joy and delight to children around the world. All the recent polling of children shows that kids, on balance, fucking hate Donald Trump.
Sesame Street even made a character that is supposed to represent him named Donald Grump, which debuted in 2005.
A good rule in life is never trust anybody who hates or is hated by children and dogs.
Or cats. Cats know.
Absolutely. We all know the guy. We're all fucking tired of him. Back when I was writing for the Daily Beast in 2016, I wrote a piece where I interviewed a bunch of people about when they thought the last time would be that they'd ever have to think about Donald Trump. Most of them thought our long national nightmare would be over by 2020 at the latest.
Erin, I'm on 3 prescriptions to deal with this national nightmare as it extends into 2024.
But despite the fact that we all would not mind forgetting about Donald Trump starting tomorrow, it's important to remember as we head toward the final stretch of this election, the Trump myth is that he's a self-made man. In truth, he was a millionaire before he was even 10 years old. He says he received a small loan from his dad. Over the course of his life, he received more than $430 million from his father's company and borrowed about $60 million, most of which he didn't pay back, which is called just getting money, according to a New York Times investigation. Trump fancies himself a builder, but only spreads destruction and sadness. Destruction is, in its way, its own form of power, kind of like how shitting all over the lobby of a Target and forcing it to close down for several hours as custodians clean it up is a form of power. But true creation isn't for the impatient or the stupid or the fickle. Trump is not a builder. He just ruins things. He even managed to lose money during historic bull markets between the mid-1980s and mid-1990s. He wrote off more losses than just about any other individual taxpayer in the entire country.
Every cultural or political space he enters, he crop dusts with the stench of corruption, desperation, and indomitable delusional self-regard. A man who more than anything wants to be seen as respectable and successful, but at the end of the day is simply an unremarkable rich kid randomly hitting buttons like a monkey in a cockpit.
So let's start at the beginning of the Trump story. Before he was a 34-time convicted felon and adjudicated rapist who held the record for most impeachments of any president ever, Donald, don't call me Donnie, Trump was just some pampered little shithead from Queens. He was born on June 14th, 1946.
Giving Geminis everywhere a bad name.
Okay, they do a pretty good job of that without Donald Trump's help, but it certainly didn't hurt. Donnie was born to Fred and Mary Trump, a Queens slumlord and stay-at-home mom.
He's got his father's nose and his mother's, hair.
The magician Penn Jillette once described it as, quote, cotton candy made of piss. And this description is so perfectly cruel and correct that I think it should be the last word on it. And speaking of cruel, even by Trump's own account in the best-selling, quote-unquote, autobiography, The Art of the Deal, his father, Fred Trump, was a shithead, a bully, and an asshole. Donald's mother, Mary, experienced post-birth complications that ended in her having her uterus and ovaries removed in a brutal surgery. She got the best care available at the time because her husband had connections to the hospital. She was in and out of inpatient care for 6 months, but even so, she was left feeble and brittle, and Fred believed that looking after the children was somehow below him, so he worked 6 days a week at his slumlord factory, or whatever they called it, while his fragile wife looked after 5 children as her bones slowly withered to dust.
Well, that's an informative part of the old origin story, but back to your exaggerated air quotes, you cited Trump's autobiography, but wasn't The Art of the Deal, not written by Donald Trump at all?
Yeah, Trump had a ghostwriter named Tony Schwartz who did all the actual writing. We'll talk more about the drama around that book's 1987 publication and the ripple effect it had on world history in a bit.
Because a lot of the legend of Donald Trump is just crap he said he did that nobody bothered to fact check. Or fact check too late.
Yeah, his biggest skill is the audacity. Well, actually, his biggest skill was having a rich dad who had paid off the right politicians and a corrupt system that makes it nearly impossible for rich little boys to do anything but succeed. Neither of which are skills.
Lying is at least something Trump does himself.
True. And credit where it's due, Donald Trump lies a lot, constantly even. He may be the greatest, biggest, most tremendous liar of all time. And so the book of his life is filled with easily disproven lies. One of the funniest is the lie that his father's ancestors came to the U.S. from Sweden. They did not. Do you think that guy looks Swedish? He does not.
He does not, but what a weird thing to lie about, especially because Trump and his goons were so gleeful about mocking Kamala Harris over the fact that she's both black and Indian, and they can't understand what a biracial person is.
Maybe Trump thinks she's lying about her ancestry because he spent many years lying about his ancestry, that old chestnut about how he confesses by accusing.
Which makes all this recent lying about Haitians eating pets even more disturbing. What have you been up to, Donald? Is this why you don't have pets?
Oh, what an awful thought. Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump Sr., was a real peach. In 1927, he was arrested after a KKK rally in Queens.
I'm assuming he wasn't selling cotton candy without a permit.
And that wasn't the only time he'd been arrested. He was also taken into custody in 1976 over permitting issues in a building he ran in a majority black county in Maryland. Trump's dad, Fred, was, as I mentioned before, a slumlord by all accounts, and a racist one. In 1973, Trump, his dad, and his dad's business were sued by the Department of Justice for violating the Fair Housing Act.
However, did they get caught?
Well, here's how they were outfoxed, Alyssa. The Justice Department sent black people posing as prospective tenants to ask if any apartments were available in a specific Trump development. And then they sent white prospective tenants, and the black prospective tenants were told there were no units available, and the white tenants were told there were.
Another tale as old as time in Trumpland. So the Trumps were outsmarted by the simplest trap possible. That is Scooby-Doo level. You know that old saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail? Well, Trump is a hammer that sees everything like a plate glass window.
Yeah, when confronted, the building superintendent told black prospective tenants that he was given instructions not to rent to black people by the owners of the place, the Trumps.
Well, that'll do it. So Trump's father was an asshole, and Trump, too, is an asshole. But are assholes born, or are they made?
That's a question that has driven child development research for generations. In Trump's case, it sounds like he was born one and then was made one that was even worse than the one he was born as. Starting in 8th grade, he was sent to a military academy, which is not something that good boys are sent to do. In The Art of the Deal, the author claims that it was because Trump was a, quote, tough and aggressive kid.
Ah, yes, I remember this detail from when he was first running for president. That's why he said that he always felt as though he'd been in the military to a crowd of many actual members of the actual military.
Yeah, well, to paraphrase one of Trump's biggest fans, feelings aren't facts. Not only was Donald Trump never in the military, he graduated from a military academy at the height of the Vietnam War, and he received 5 draft deferments from having to join the real military.
As the old proverb goes, everybody play the tough guy till shit pop off.
Absolutely. Good ASAP Rocky reference,
Thanks so much.
Alyssa. The deferments were because Trump's doctors claimed that he had bone spurs on his feet. The bone spurs were not enough to prevent him from playing multiple sports in high school, nor were they ever present in his subsequent life in a way that prevented him from doing pretty much anything he wanted. Many years later, his personal attorney, Michael Cohen, would tell a congressional committee that Trump had made up the bone spurs to avoid going to Vietnam. Trump would then attend college at Fordham and transfer to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania.
That always confused me. One of the only true things that Trump repeats over and over is that Wharton is a pretty good school, tough to get into, even in the 1960s.
You're not alone in wondering how Trump, by all accounts a broken-brained dum-dum who hates to read, could get into one of the best business schools in the country. But like everything else Trump has convinced himself he accomplished on his own, he couldn't have done it without help from Daddy.
Of course, the kind of affirmative action for rich kids this world needs more of.
According to Washington Post reporting from 2019, in 1966, an admissions official at the school got a call from Trump's brother, Fred Jr. Fred asked the admissions officer if he remembered his brother Donald. The admissions officer was like, no. Nevertheless, the officer agreed to interview Donald, and guess who shows up with Donald to the interview?
Oh my God, Fred? Erin, no. What kind of college-age loser needs their daddy to help them transfer out of Fordham?
I mean, if you can't do it by the time you're in your early 20s, maybe you should continue going to Fordham. It's a fine school. It's no secret that Trump started in the world of real estate development because Daddy Trump had a thriving business in the space. And we've all rage-laughed at his comment that Trump's dad gave him a, quote, small loan of $1 million.
That's according to Trump, who lies about everything. So maybe we can assume that whatever money he was given was a larger amount.
The characterization of a $1 million small loan is even contradicted by Trump's ghostwriter in The Art of the Deal, which, Alyssa, It brings me no pleasure to relay to you, I read in its
No,
entirety.
Erin, no.
I know. I had to. I didn't want to be a hack about this. Okay, so in The Art of the Deal, there's a chapter called The Cincinnati Kid, which recounts what Trump claims is one of the early deals of his career, wherein he and his dad bought a struggling apartment building in southern Ohio. By Donald's telling, buying Swifton Village was his idea. He said that they eventually tricked the next buyers into paying them $12 million for it, for a $6 million profit. But a member of the maintenance crew that was there at the time said that Donald would only show up occasionally to rake leaves, and most of the deal was done with his dad. That's an assertion that is backed up by the fact that Donald was sequestered at his military boarding school at the time and couldn't possibly have been part of the decisions he claims to have been a part of.
Predictable.
And the property was sold for only $6 million 8 years later, which was about $1 million more than the Trump business paid for it. And with maintenance and upgrades, it's unclear that they made any profit at all.
Not making a profit feels like very bad business.
There's also the tall tale of the Grand Hyatt in New York City. In The Art of the Deal, Trump basically coalesces every major player in the story into one character. Him. He also makes a meal of the story of him wheeling and dealing with the CEO of Tiffany & Company, which happened because Donald's daddy, once again, had a relationship that his big, stupid son could leverage.
When we talk about baby Trump doing baby Trump things, I have to remind myself that Trump may be a disgusting old bag of flesh now, but there was a time when he was a disgusting young bag of flesh.
Well, it's gross to think about, but yeah, absolutely, Alyssa. Donald Trump, as old and addled as he sounds in the present day, once embodied the coked-out rich people free-for-all that was the 1980s. He became a darling of the New York tabloids.
But Trump loved to play the press like a fiddle. What we didn't know back then was that Trump planted most of the stories about himself and even pretended to be his own spokesperson repeatedly throughout the years, using names like John Barron and John Miller.
Have you met him? He's a good guy, and he's going to always treat her well as he treated his wife well.
Calling a newspaper and not even trying to disguise your very distinctive
not
voice,
even a little.
Pretending to be some other guy. Real amateur shit, Donald. Call me when you come up to the big leagues with those of us pretending to be our own lawyers to get out of gym memberships. Second of all, it is never not funny to me that Trump eventually named his youngest legitimate child Barron.
Beyond.
Barron, after the fake name he gave himself when planting stories in the tabloids in the 1980s.
Listen to this. A 1976 New York Times profile of Donald Trump as an up-and-coming real estate Nepo baby begins as follows. He is tall, lean, and blonde with dazzling white teeth, and he looks ever so much like Robert Redford.
I'm willing to bet that the source for Donald Trump looks like Robert Redford was someone who had the general appearance of Donald Trump wearing Groucho glasses.
No, Erin, don't be silly. It was legitimate source John Barron. I bet Robert Redford had some real feelings about that comparison. It's so bizarre to look back on some of these news clippings from the 80s because it becomes immediately clear that Trump has, always been like this.
Yeah, in another Times article about his empire and ego in 1983, Trump was already saying shit like, "No one has done more than I in the last 7 years." Okay, Lord Farquaad.
By that time, he was already married to his first wife, Ivana Trump, who is a former model and Czech Olympic skier.
Okay, he claimed she was a former top model and Czech Olympic skier. But that claim was eventually debunked by the legendary Spy magazine, the same place, by the way, that coined the phrase short-fingered vulgarian in describing Trump.
Spy fact-checked Trump and found that not only was Ivana not an Olympic skier, nor was she an alternate, whatever that means, she was not a top model. Still, her oldest son, Don Jr., was, as recently as this year, claiming that his mother had been an Olympian. She's not. She never was.
You hear that, ladies? You can strive and work and convince your family that you're an Olympian, and mutilate your face and body in the pursuit of the standard your rich husband demands, and you still end up buried unceremoniously on the 9th hole at the Trump Bedminster Golf Course in New Jersey.
The tabloids love to cover Trump and Ivana and their high-rolling lifestyle, as well as Trump's high-profile philandering. That 1983 profile noted how frequently Trump appeared around the city in the company of fashion models.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So over the last couple of years, I've taught myself how to garden in the climate where I currently live, which is much different than the climate where I grew up. And it's been a lot of trial and error. I've had to kill a lot of plants along the way. But now I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on how to grow plants, how to keep a nice lawn, no mow grass, obviously, and how to take care of things in the climate where I currently live. Similarly, it has been important for me to learn how to cultivate the garden of my emotional landscape, if you will, and therapy is a great tool for that. Just having the self-awareness to understand when I'm engaging in a pattern that is helpful or not helpful, and being able to stop and take a look at what my next choice is going to be as a choice rather than something that I must do because I've always done it that way. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/hysteriapod today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/hysteriapod. Around the mid to late 1980s, while still very much married to Ivana, who had by that point given him 3 children who would later terrorize America in their own special ways, Trump began having an affair with model and sometimes actress Marla Maples, though for years the two claimed they were just friends.
That's ridiculous, the idea that Trump has ever had a friend.
This was also around the same time that Trump was super busy doing important things like hanging out with Ghislaine Maxwell on her dad's yacht.
And here we are back with another episode of 6 Degrees of Jeffrey Epstein.
Trump and Ivana announced their separation in 1989, and their divorce was finalized in 1990. The divorce cost Donald at least $25 million, which seems like another bad deal for a guy whose whole persona is based on being good at making deals. He was then free to pursue his shiny, new 26-year-old girlfriend, fulfilling his creepy midlife crisis destiny.
Marla then showed up on every tabloid as well, with headlines like Trump mistress close to suicide.
Yeah, I would imagine seeing Donald Trump's penis would do that to you.
Ivana and Donald's divorce proceedings became a tabloid extravaganza of their own.
It was around this time that the tabloids became just a little less friendly to the Donald, as his divorce proceedings exposed that he was even shittier than most people already knew.
Chiefly, in a sworn deposition, Ivana claimed that Trump had physically abused and raped her during their marriage, though she walked this back following their settlement.
Oof, we'll check back in with 90s Trump in a minute, but not a great start to the decade. Now that we've arrived in the late 1980s, it's time to talk about the book that introduced America to the character of Donald Trump, the fun-loving business scamp who at the end of the day just wanted to build nice buildings and create luxuries for people with the means to buy them. I'm talking about The Art of the Deal.
Up to this point, what New Yorkers knew about Donald Trump was what we've just told you. He was a spoiled rich boy who wanted to join clubs that didn't want him as a member, but whose paternal connections afforded him access to a sort of luxury kabuki that made him, as John Mulaney famously said, what a hobo imagines a rich man to be. He's already bought Mar-a-Lago and a few casinos in Atlantic City that he was somehow managing to run into the ground. In fact, by 1992, all of his Atlantic City casinos would be bankrupt.
Yeah, at one point, Trump was in such dire financial straits with his casinos that he had, guess who, Daddy, send a guy to buy $3 million worth of chips at one of them to save it from financial ruin. Trump was, in reality, a bumbling fail son. But that was eclipsed by the loud, bold-type lie that was The Art of the Deal. Trump claims that The Art of the Deal is the best-selling business book of all time. It's not. The #1 best-selling business book of all time outsold The Art of the Deal 15-fold, but that's not the stupidest lie around the book, Alyssa. I read the steaming coil of poo, and I have to say, it bored me out of my mind. The first 50 or so pages, Alyssa, consist of something called A Week in the Life. And it's just a list of what Donald Trump does all day, which was sit at his desk. I swear, he sits at his desk and he calls people on the phone. And he explains to us why each person he was calling was important. Like, I feel bad for the trees that died to make pages in this slimy, worthless rag. I will never get the time back that I wasted on such kernels of wisdom as, I play to people's fantasies. People want to believe that something is the biggest and the greatest and the most spectacular. I call it truthful hyperbole.
And here we see the kernels of his debate prep strategy, Alternative Facts version 1.0.
Creating stories. Secondly, I'm so unclear what his job is or what it means to make a deal. Like, 300 plus pages. And I'm like, what is your job? The closest I've been able to get is that the book makes more sense if you Control F replace deal with the phrase getting people to give me money. Or maybe more accurately, autofellatio. That means the art of sucking your own.
I get it.
Okay.
I get it. I get it.
Okay. So the book was a massive success in a real sense of the word, not in a Donald Trump truthful hyperbole sense of the word. It sold millions of copies, stayed on the bestseller list for the better part of a year. It lent Trump a credibility he didn't have before to people outside of New York City tabloid circulation. Most importantly, it got him attention and an audience that would let him get away with lying about how important and effective he was. One of my favorite parts was when he tried to finesse one of the greatest faceplants in the history of sports business when he bought the New Jersey Generals football team in a league that was meant to compete with the NFL. And then he tried to sue the NFL to break up the monopoly, and then that got fucked up so badly that his entire league collapsed.
Well, when you can't crack casinos, why not try sports? You know, if the league hadn't collapsed, he'd have ended up betting against his own team to make more money because he has no loyalty to anything ever.
Yeah, all this came after he tried unsuccessfully and multiple times to buy other pro football teams, but the owners basically shut him out because even they could see through their haze of greed thick enough to obscure CTE that Trump was a joke that didn't know what he was doing. But here's the main takeaway from The Art of the Deal. Even if everything in it were true, it would still be shit. Sorry, Tony. The genius business advice in The Art of the Deal is anodyne at best and patronizing to its lowest common denominator audience at worst. I'd say a low point is when the book defines leverage as having something the other guy wants, or clarifies that Diana Ross is a singer.
Thanks, bro.
And Schwartz would later admit that Donald Trump was so easily distracted and impatient with the interview questions that the character of Trump in the book is mostly just something he invented by following Donald Trump around. Because in real negotiations in life, there's no finesse from Team Trump. There's threats, bullying, intimidation, lying, insulting, and brute force. Trump's deal-making style is about as artful as a date rape. There is also an anecdote in the book about how he evicted long-term rent-controlled tenants at a building on Central Park South. In it, even through his rose-colored myth-building glasses, Trump alludes to using slumlord tactics to displace residents in the service of replacing the building with something tacky and expensive. He was widely criticized for these tactics, and even if he won, the battles always cost him a lot of money.
Tacky and expensive, Erin. He should put it on his license plates.
Absolutely. I think it's implied by just his whole thing. But he doesn't always win in practice. There's a great film turned 8-part BBC podcast called Trumped about a small community in Scotland that stood up to Trump in the early 2000s in a battle that is still going on. Trump and his cronies tried to build a golf course on protected and ecologically important land in the northeast of the country, including on the land of one farmer named Michael Forbes, who was later named Top Scot of the Year for his utter refusal to leave his property. Trump and his company rolled in thinking they'd just be able to buy ancestral homes out from under people. And then, when the people didn't want to sell, they tried to convince the Scottish government to force them off their land, which shows me even though Trump's mom is Scottish, he's never actually been in a fight with a real Scot. They are stubborn motherfuckers, and we have to stand.
Thank you for your service, Erin.
Thanks. My brain is now Velveeta on a radiator. But what I want to focus on is that Trump didn't write the book. His ghostwriter, a young magazine editor named Tony Schwartz, did. And in a piece in The New Yorker published in 2016, months before Trump was elected president, Schwartz had some pretty revealing things to say about his role in the book.
At this point, I don't know if there are any more word plays that can be done on the title.
Don't worry, we don't need one. The book was filled with bombacity, flat-out falsehoods like we were talking about. And Tony Schwartz recounted that Trump, even before he clearly couldn't coherently answer simple questions during town halls or media appearances, had trouble telling the difference between reality and fiction. Either that or he didn't care. For example, Schwartz wrote the book. People at the book's publisher back this up. One executive from the publisher commented on Trump's authorship by noting that Donald Trump didn't even write them a damn postcard. But Schwartz thinks that Trump has convinced himself that he did write it.
Well, that tracks.
One particular part that stood out to me was when Donnie recounted trying to break into the Manhattan social scene in the 80s. He didn't drink and has claimed that he's never done drugs, but was desperate to join a social club called Le Club.
That's the most 80s name for anything ever. Also, how appropriately creepy is it that he was just this leering, sober guy at a club full of people imbibing in drugs and alcohol, and that was the entire center of his social life. Look, you can be a fun, sober person, but the way Trump integrated with that world, it sounds kind of predatory.
Imagine that, Trump acting weird and predatory. So Trump says in the book that he tries to join the club, but the old guys who run it are hesitant because he's so young and good looking that they're worried he's going to steal their wives.
Yes, Erin, so young, so handsome. Fun fact, though, did you know that according to Ian Schrager, founder of Studio 54, that Trump frequented the club, but he never saw him dance, ever? Feels pathological.
Wow. He is literally the guy that just stands there at the end of the dance floor looking at people who are dancing. But having seen him dance on the campaign trail, I can kind of see why he was a real turd in the punch bowl of Studio 54. Art of the Deal, Trump scoffs at the notion of Trump being some kind of wife thief, noting that his parents had been married for 50 years and his mom was a goddamn saint and that he'd never break up a marriage. Unbeknownst to the book's ghostwriter and most of its readers, Trump was at that very moment in the process of breaking up his own marriage. Almost 350 pages later, Alyssa, I don't know what his job is.
Here's the thing about the Art of the Deal that is on a meta level kind of funny. So Tony Schwartz actually negotiated a really good deal for himself, 50% of the proceeds from sales.
Wow, I thought Trump was good at making deals. He wrote a whole book about it, or he pretended to.
Trump didn't even push back when Schwartz asked for it, but then after the book came out and was doing well, Trump threw himself and the book a lavish party at Trump Tower with a bunch of minor celebrity guests, and then he billed Tony Schwartz for half of it.
What the fuck?
But Tony Schwartz was able to negotiate the payment down to a small donation to a charity of Schwartz's choice.
Wow, actually pretty Trumpy negotiating skills.
And Trump went for it.
Because he's not actually good at business. He's lucky, he's boorish, and he's mean. While writing the book, Schwartz also noticed that Trump didn't read, something that tracks with what we now know about him. He'd just sit there and thumb through the papers maybe and watch a lot of TV and bother people by calling them on the phone and yapping at them for a half hour or so.
Guess that explains why Trump said this month that he hadn't read his current wife Melania's book. He simply got too much nothing to read to possibly make more space in his schedule for his wife.
Where is Melania, by the way?
Has there ever been a wife who publicly projected hating her husband more?
Maybe Annie Murphy's character in Kevin Can Fuck Himself, or Marcia Roy when Logan was taking up with Carrie. Maybe. So in the depths of his own regret, Schwartz donated all of the proceeds of the sales of The Art of the Deal from 2016 to charities that supported causes that Trump would have hated. And in recent years, he's asked the Library of Congress to recategorize it as a work of fiction, which isn't nothing.
It's not nothing, but it's the least he could have done. It's more than Trump ever would have done.
We're now in the 1990s. I already feel like I've aged 20 years.
In 1993, a tell-all biography called Lost Tycoon, The Many Lives of Donald J. Trump by Harry Hurt III was published and ushered in a newly forming consensus that Donald Trump was maybe, hear us out, a fraud. He lost so much money during the 1980s that he dropped off Wealthy Dudes list. The Art of the Deal, turns out, came out right before he almost completely self-immolated.
Damn, don't play with my heart. The LA Times review of the book kind of says it all. As Hurt spins out his breathless tales of self-promotion and sexual betrayal and sheer self-aggrandizement, we come to realize that Trump was never quite what he advertised. He was not especially adept at deal-making or love-making. Ugh. What a bad word. He was not glamorous or urbane, and he was not even all that rich.
Harry bringing the hurt, indeed.
I'll allow it. And he went to great pains to enumerate exactly the ways in which the Donald Trump empire was built on sand, or in his case, debt and tax abatements.
The book portrays Trump accurately as a famous for being famous offspring of someone important with no real skills of his own.
Yes. Again, the Kim Kardashian of his day. Or, as the LA Times review described Hurt's depiction of Trump, a kind of fourth-rate Howard Hughes, a pathetic figure who postured and preened for the media but ended up as a parody of himself. Which brings us to the second pillar of Trump's smoke and mirrors public image, along with The Art of the Deal, The Apprentice.
I knew it was coming.
Back in the noughties, that's what, when I was in college, we were promised we'd call the early 2000s lies. Donald Trump was a failure and a joke. He declared bankruptcy a handful of times. He had yet to be accepted into the upper crust of Manhattan, despite showing up everywhere that would have him, like your friend from high school who just joined an MLM and is constantly trying to get people in her downline. He'd lost more money than some small countries had ever made.
And New Yorkers had kind of moved on from that weird 80s image that Trump couldn't seem to let go of. Post 9/11, people weren't really into dudes whose personality was going around being business guys.
Right, but the rest of America isn't usually on top of Manhattan social trends.
Nope, which is why when hotshot reality TV producer Mark Burnett had the idea for a reality show where contestants would compete for a job under a successful guy, he called Trump. Interesting fact, though, Erin, Burnett's team had actually reached out to moguls like Jack Welch, Warren Buffett, and Richard Branson first, but it was decided they either didn't have the time or the charisma.
And Trump was, in fact, down because he's so horny for attention that he seems to suffer symptoms of withdrawal when he isn't getting enough. Also, he's always been eager to be a part of the entertainment business. In The Art of the Deal, he says he considered going to USC for film school before he went to Wharton. Oh, my God. He doesn't seem to have a passion for film as an art form, though. It seems like he just sees entertainment as a means to an end.
And that end is as much attention as possible at all times.
One stipulation Trump had for people who wanted to film on his properties was that he needed to have a cameo in whatever was being made, and that's how we ended up with a Donald Trump jump scare in a scene at the Plaza Hotel in Home Alone 2.
So it makes perfect sense that he jumped at the chance to play a billionaire on television.
The Apprentice was a huge hit. It ended up running for 15 seasons on NBC in various forms. Actually, fun fact about The Apprentice, the original idea was to have a different mogul every season. But people so liked watching Donald Trump like kabuki mogul on TV that they just kept asking him back. And it solidified Trump as a successful business boy in the minds of Americans who may not be, shall we say, familiar with how any of that stuff works.
Watching old clips, it's clear that we're watching Trump act like how he thinks a successful businessman acts. And eventually, he's just doing an impression of himself, doing an impression of himself, doing an impression of himself, like a snake eating its own tail.
Or again, sucking one's own dick.
Such colorful descriptions, Erin. I don't think he has the flexibility, though.
No, he does not. So while Trump was on set of The Apprentice, it turns out he wasn't doing much of the actual show running. The show just made him look like he was in charge when he actually wasn't. The magic of television.
Contestants would only see him for a few minutes per episode, for example.
But as we'll find out later, despite the fact that Trump wasn't really driving the ship, he found plenty of opportunities to act like a pig on set.
There are so many stories about that we literally had to break this segment up and move part of it to episode 2. Have fun writing that one, Erin.
Oh, my co-writer Julia and I are ready. And by ready, I mean exhausted. But there's one more thing I think we should talk about before we finish this first very long, very beautiful, perhaps the most spectacular and tremendous intro to Trump's pre-political life ever put on video.
I hope it's all the absolute trash that he allowed his name to be slapped onto.
Bingo! Because as he was becoming a sort of living cartoon while starring on The Apprentice, Trump entered his Krusty the Clown era. There was no shitty product he wouldn't slap his name on, from vodka to steaks, to board games. He's put his name on enough trash to name an entire dump after him. Call it the Trump dump.
When it comes to great steaks, I've just raised the stakes. Trump steaks are the world's greatest steaks, and I mean that in every sense of the word. I understand steaks. It's my favorite food.
Trump Shuttle's fleet consisted of 21 Boeing 727s. Trump spent $1 million to refurbish each plane.
I love competing against Pan Am.
In August of 1989, a Trump Shuttle flight made an emergency landing in Boston when the plane's front landing gear malfunctioned.
It's a smooth vodka, it's a great tasting vodka, and I'm very proud of the fact actually that I don't drink, but it's a vodka that people really like, and as you know, it's taken off like crazy.
My new game is Trump, the game.
Trump, the game where you deal for everything you've ever wanted to own. Because it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether you win.
I think you'll like it.
Oh my God. Raising the stakes also, I'm like, how does that work with food? How does that, like,
Don't know.
raise,
Don't.
do you mean like raise like lift or raise like R-A-Z-E? Is this a building pun?
He
like,
doesn't know, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, he's a marketing genius, Alyssa.
Genius.
But I saved the best for last. Too often forgotten in the slurry of his trash is that Trump was involved in the writing of a, okay, I'm girding my loins for this, erotic novel called Trump Tower.
What? No, Erin. I'm sorry, what?
Alyssa, it brings me no pleasure, perhaps the opposite of pleasure, to report that this is true. By the time the book was published in 2012, the cover credited Jeffrey Robinson as the sole author, but the publisher originally marketed the book as the debut novel from international business mogul, television superstar, and New York City icon Donald J. Trump.
Danielle Steele is shaken in her boots.
Obviously, like most celebrities, it's fair to say that Donald Trump doesn't write his own books. But the thing is, this book actually does read like Trump wrote it, or at least Scream dictated it into a recorder.
What makes you say that?
Because it's absolutely batshit. The characters speak in the third person enough, and the phrase gorgeous breasts appears so many times that you're left being like, yeah, this has to be a Donald Trump original. So anyways, the book is a 50 Shades of Grey ripoff except with tons of typos and written by a man, so the descriptions of every female character are entirely based on her appearance, and the male characters are barely described at all. The characters have names. This is like take 5 of me trying to do this. The characters have names like Pierre Belcrone, Ricky Lips, and Tommy Seasons.
So all the male characters have names that instinctively make women cover their drinks. I guess that sounds right.
Yeah, the book is eye-poppingly sexist, even for Trump, and reads like a bad porn/evening soap opera. But that makes sense. Trump is a man who is obsessed with the show Dynasty. Here's a scene where an NBC News employee tells one of the tenants at Trump Tower that she will get a promotion over her white coworkers. Come on, you're a shoo-in, he reminded her. 2 white guys and a great-looking minority girl with perfect boobs. No contest. That's really from the book, Alyssa. That is really...
A 2-for-1 deal on racism and sexism.
I need to leave on a reading from the scene where the aforementioned Ricky Lips hooks up with a married tenant of Trump Tower named Tina. Pray for me. Then he saw Tina and smiled. If it isn't me visiting nurse service. She walked up to him and grabbed his arm. Come do me. What a good idea, he said. Don't mind if I do.
May this episode not spike his book sales. Please.
Which brings us to 2015, where we will start next episode. We also realize the irony of giving this man more attention, but as we get closer to the election, it's important to remember what an utter loser he is when the facts tell the story and not his own big wet mouth. So Alyssa, on a scale of 1 to 5 weasels, how many does Trump up to the golden escalator ride get?
I don't know. I mean, like, he's the grossest human I think we know, but I also know we know it gets so much worse. So I'm going to go with 3 weasels so far. How about you, Erin?
I'm going to say up to this point it's 3 weasels because he's kind of a bumbling buffoon. I think that he being a slumlord is bad. I think the racism is bad. I think the sexism is bad. Stuff we will learn about his behavior on set at The Apprentice as we get closer to his election. Pretty bad. Miss Universe stuff, golf stuff, bad. But this is stuff that wasn't super widely known or discussed because, you know, like we said, he was a buffoon up to this point. He was a buffoon or a TV star pretending to be powerful up to this point.
The election is close. Too close. Sometimes we wonder if we're watching the same doddering Trump footage as people who are still supporting him.
Hey, listen, Alyssa. Hannibal Lecter crossing the Darien Gap is real kitchen table concern for millions of Americans. All right, that's all the time we have for this edition of This Fucking Guy. If you like what you saw and heard, leave us a review and a comment and share us with your friends.
And stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 of a very special Fucking Guy pre-election Trump-tacular trilogy. In the meantime, if you want to make sure he's never in the White House again, visit votesaveamerica.com/2024.